Madam Speaker, I recognize myself for the remainder of our time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, my colleagues, after 8 hours, let us return to where we began with the articles themselves. Article 1 charges the President of the United States with abusing the power of his office by coercing an ally into cheating in a U.S. election on his behalf. It charges the President of the United States. It charges the...
Be in order. The gentleman has a right to be heard.
It charges the President of the United States.
The gentleman shall suspend. Gentleman may resume.
It charges the President of the United States with abusing his power by withholding official acts, by withholding a White House meeting that the President of Ukraine desperately sought to establish the support of his most important benefactor, the United States, by withholding hundreds of millions of dollars of military aid to a nation at war in order to get that nation to intervene in our election by smearing his opponent. That is the gravamen of the charge in Article 1. And what is the defense from my colleagues? Now, I've listened carefully to my colleagues for the last 8 hours, and I have to say it's been hard for me to follow. But it amounts, I think, when you cut through it all, when you cut through all the sound and the fury signifying nothing, what it really amounts to is this: why should we care? Why should we care about what the President did to Ukraine? Well, first of all, we should care about our allies. We should care about Ukraine. We should care about a country struggling to be free and a democracy. We used to care about democracy. We used to care about our allies. We used to stand up to Putin and Russia. We used to. I know the party of Ronald Reagan used to. Why should we care about Ukraine? But of course, it's about more than Ukraine. It's about us. It's about our national security. Their fight is our fight. Their defense is our defense. When Russia remakes the map of Europe for the first time since World War II by dint of military force, and Ukraine fights back, it is our fight too. And when the President sacrifices our interests, our national security for his election, he is sacrificing our country for his personal gain. That is the gravamen of Article 1. Article 2. Article 2 charges the President of the United States with obstructing the Congress, with denying the Congress any witness, any document, by telling all of his administration people, you will not appear. You will ignore a co-equal branch of government. And what is the defense to this from my colleagues? Again, it is, why should we care? He is the president of our party. Why should we care if he ignores this Congress? Well, I remind my friends that he will not be the last president. There will be another president. And you may be one day, although you do not act like it, you may one day be in the majority. And you will want to hold a president accountable. And what will you say when that president says, you are a paper tiger, you have no oversight, I can ignore your subpoenas? What will you say? What will you argue? Well, no, that was different. Then we were in the minority. Then it was a Republican president. Will that be your argument? Is that how little faith you have in our democracy, in our Constitution? Is that how poorly you defend and uphold that Constitution? But finally, let me ask this question that overrides it all. Why should we care about any of this? And I will bring you to one conversation that came to light, because it's not the most important conversation, but in many ways, it is the most revealing. It took place on September 14th in Ukraine, when Ambassador Volker sat down with Andrei Yermak, the top advisor to Zelensky. And he did what he should do. He supported the rule of law, and he said, you, President, you, Andrei Yermak, should not investigate the last president, President Poroshenko, for political reasons. You should not engage in political investigations. And you know what Yermak said? Oh, you mean like you want us to do with the Bidens and the Clintons? And in that abrupt, brutal retort, we see why we should care. Because what he was saying is, you, America, have forgotten what it means to uphold the rule of law. You have forgotten what it means to say that no one is above the law. We are a struggling democracy, but even we know better than that. What is at risk here? What is at risk here is the very idea of America. That idea holds that we are a nation of laws, not of men. We are a nation that believes in a rule of law. When we say we uphold the Constitution, we're not talking about a piece of parchment. We're talking about a beautiful architecture in which ambition is set against ambition, in which no branch of government can dominate another. That is what it means to uphold the Constitution. If you ignore it, if you say the president may refuse to comply, may refuse lawful process, may coerce an ally, may cheat in an election because he's the president of our party, you do not uphold our Constitution. You do not uphold your oath of office. Well, I will tell you this, I will uphold mine. I will vote to impeach Donald Trump. I yield back.
The House of Representatives has voted to impeach the President of the United States for only the third time in American history. Donald J. Trump is charged with abusing his power and obstructing Congress. Now the Senate must decide whether they will convict him and remove him from power. A lot has happened to get us to this point. Let's look back at how it all began. By now, you know the story. President Trump freezes military aid to Ukraine. In July, he speaks with the Ukrainian president by phone and asks him to investigate a political rival, Joe Biden. Shortly after, the Inspector General of the intelligence community, Michael Atkinson, receives a whistleblower complaint. It alleges President Trump pressured Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 election, and the White House tried to cover it up. Atkinson sends the complaint to the acting director of national intelligence, Joseph Maguire, and this is where things break down. The whistleblower law says the director shall send the complaint to Congress, but Maguire does not do that. This complaint is different than most. It involves Maguire's boss, the President of the United States, and his conversations with a foreign leader. And those discussions may be subject to executive privilege, being withheld from the public for purposes of national security or to protect internal deliberations.
A privilege that I do not have the authority to waive.
So instead of sending the complaint to Congress, Maguire asks the White House for guidance.
You went to the subject of the complaint for advice first about whether you should provide the complaint to Congress.
I believe that everything here in this matter is totally unprecedented.
Maguire forwards the complaint to the Justice Department. At this point, the process stalls. This is when Inspector General Atkinson tips off Congress about the existence of the complaint, and the House of Representatives starts to investigate. There's a series of leaks, and the accusations within the complaint are made public. This puts pressure on the White House, and President Trump confirms that he discussed Joe Biden on his call with the Ukrainian president.
That call was a great call. It was a perfect call. A perfect call.
With that, the House launches an impeachment inquiry.
The president must be held accountable. No one is above the law.
The next day, the White House declassifies a rough transcript of the call, and the whistleblower complaint is sent to Congress. House Democrats begin to subpoena employees of the executive branch, threatening contempt citations if they don't show up. The White House pushes back, saying the entire process is unconstitutional and violates the president's right to due process.
The resolution is adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
So the House formalizes its inquiry with a vote that predictably falls along party lines and holds a series of private and public hearings.
I found the July 25th phone call unusual because, in contrast to other presidential calls I had observed, it involved discussion of what appeared to be a domestic political matter.
I had concerns, and it was my duty to report.
Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes. Everyone was in the loop.
The Constitution says a president can be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, but it does not define what those terms mean. That is up to Congress, and the House decides to move forward.
The House Committee on the Judiciary is introducing 2 articles of impeachment charging the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, with committing high crimes and misdemeanors.
And it heads to the House floor for debate.
It is tragic that the president's reckless actions make impeachment necessary. He gave us no choice.
It is a matter for the voters, not this House, not in this way, not in the way this is being done. It has trampled everything this House believes in.
In an historic vote, the House of Representatives charges President Trump with abusing his power and obstructing Congress. Now it moves to the Senate for a trial where a 2/3 majority would be needed to convict him and remove him from office. In the meantime, President Trump is up for re-election in 2020, which means Democrats and Republicans must strike an awkward balance between pursuing their constitutional duties and protecting their political careers.